Hello and welcome to Kody and Korbin have a podcast, the show where two former roommates sit in person and talk about some of their childhood favorites. Today we're doing a childhood movie swap of two of our classic favorite movies, mine being Small Soldiers and of course Cody's being Cool Runnings. So really excited to get into that. Kody, it's great to see you in person, man.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I don't think we've done an in-person podcast. How long has it been? Probably 3 years, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, like around Christmas, we did a little bit of that recording
yeah.
together, but that was like 10 minutes of an intro. We haven't done a full episode.
True.
And this weekend, we've kind of recorded two, or we've recorded one already, and then we've got this coming at you. So I'm really excited that we just have the chance to finally get back in person. It's been since season one.
Yeah, it's been a really long time. And I'm also excited to be back. I think we're doing an interesting topic today as well. I feel like we've referenced these movies a lot throughout KHAP. So if you know some KHAP lore, you've probably heard these flicks.
100%. This is definitely KHAP lore. It's deep in there.
But yeah, a little bit of a movie swap too, because I don't think either one of us really just wanted to kind of watch the other's movie on its own.
Right.
So it's kind of a little.
Would be unfair to do a single episode about each. Let's just knock them both out in one single episode today.
I like that. Yeah, and I think my movie is much better too, but I think it should be a really fun episode. A lot of nostalgic values, probably.
Exactly. We took two of the favorites that you had to see when you were a little kid. I think probably truly appreciate for what they are. Let's start with your pick, Kody.
Okay.
Cool Runnings. Obviously, like we said, we've talked about these movies a lot on the podcast, but why specifically in doing this movie swap was this the movie one?
I feel like it's going to be maybe a similar answer to you, but I mean, this is one of the movies I just saw a ton when I was growing up. My mom was like really overprotective as a parent, and she wouldn't really let me watch anything that wasn't, a super G rating. I don't know, like this movie does have some weird stuff in it, so I'm surprised it passed her test, but
it's a Disney film at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think when you get that Disney logo on the front, your mom was probably thinking it's all good.
She saw the cover of the movie and it's like, this will probably do the job. But yeah, that's the main reasoning, obviously. I think it's pretty underrated. And it's something I've just seen over and over and over. But I'll get into more of my initial thoughts. But I think it's kind of like an underlooked kind of live action Disney film. It kind of has the same vibes a little bit as like a Miracle, but everybody talks about Miracle and nobody really talks about Cool Runnings. So that's pretty sad, I think. The Kurt Russell treatment, maybe.
I mean, I think there's some real life reasons for that as well. Like the impact of the actual story. And obviously, like Miracle, as Americans, we're going to be like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's us. We did it.
Yeah, so I think that just shows the U.S. doesn't really care about anybody but themselves,
Yeah.
which is sad because it's like a similar story, I guess, tonally in some parts, but a lot more like comedically fun. But there was a lot of fun stuff in Miracle, I guess, but no Kurt Russell, just John Candy. Have you ever seen this movie before?
I had never seen it. This was the first time watch this past weekend. As a warm-up to get things started about Cool Runnings, Cody's going to say one thing that he thinks is bad about the movie, and then I'm going to say one thing that's good to just start us off on a positive note.
Yeah.
Cody, what's the bad thing?
I think for me, it's centered more like around the dialogue in a sense. I don't think this is like a perfectly written movie. It's not like a Danny Boyle or Aaron Sorkin kind of production out here. It's a kid's movie, so I think there's a lot of hit and miss comedy for me. And some of it, like on a rewatch these days, I was like, that's kind of a miss on my end. But when I was a kid, I was probably laughing a lot.
Yeah,
so I think like from an adult perspective, it's just got the Disneyfication, I think, a little bit. And it's not as rewatchable as probably as I think it was back in the day. So I probably have seen this movie like probably 25 times, somewhere around that range. So I have seen it a lot. But I think I'm going to space out my rewatches a little bit more now because it's a little bit hit or miss.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the dialogue is a little stilted at points, and they're trying to just like get to point A to point B, and
yeah,
you got to feel bad for some of these actors. It's like, man, you really got to say that right now. It's like, okay, sure. For me, the positive thing that I'll point out is the Hans Zimmer score. I mean, shout out to the guy, throwing in a little bit of the Jamaican flair in a couple of the scenes, and just, I mean, the way it plays out, especially in the races and the training montages. Hans Zimmer is one of the greats. He's been doing it for decades, literally, and this is a great early example of that. And it really adds to that uplifting nature that we find at the end.
100%. I will definitely bring that up in a little bit as well.
Cody, just for the people, break down what is Cool Runnings.
Yeah, and when this was presented to me, I went pretty in depth here.
Okay.
So if you haven't seen Cool Runnings, and this is all off the cuff pretty much too, but basically, obviously, the main premise is you got these 3 Jamaican sprinters. And the main one, his dad was like an Olympic gold medalist, Derice. And they're all trying out for the Olympic sprinting team, which is pretty common in Jamaica, I would say.
Usain Bolt, one of the most famous sprinters of all time.
They usually dominate the Olympics, and they have for a long time. But yeah, so basically they're in tryouts, and then this one guy, this rich boy, trips Derice and this other bald guy, and they lose the race basically. And they go to the guy and complain. He's like, "Hey, wait 4 years." They're like, "We don't really want to do that." So
that is always the tough thing about the Olympics. See it 4 years.
Yeah, that is tough. Also, it's pretty unfair, but regardless, they want to start a bobsled team because that's a lot less time, and they can do that more quickly, basically. They find John Candy, who's pretty much been disrespected in this sport. Nobody really likes him because he cheated, but he's the only one who knows anything about bobsledding, so he becomes their coach. They also throw in Derice's best friend, Sanka, who's a pushcart champion driver. Great character, probably my favorite. Yeah, that's kind of just classic hijinks from there. They go to the Olympics in Calgary, like you said, fish out of water, and everybody pretty much hates them. But that's the basic premise. I think it's pretty simple, but a lot of fun. Going from the island to kind of the ice town is a cool location change, I think, as well.
I think it's one of those things that, like, when it's happening, everyone's like, man, this would make a great movie. Like, can you imagine Jamaican bobsledder? And then, the real life events maybe don't play out as cinematically, so you have to change some things in the script. But I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit.
Not probably the most loyal biopic of all time, but a fun movie regardless.
I want to kind of talk about the cast a little bit. So the director, I guess we'll start with, first of all, John Turteltaub. Do you know what he's directed, man?
Yeah, I believe pretty much the only other thing he's directed is the 2 National Treasure movies.
Exactly. So we've actually talked about a John Turteltaub production previously on the podcast already.
Yeah, and I didn't know that. When I was going through the whole Letterboxd page, I was looking around at what else he had done, and this guy might be my new favorite director, honestly. So shout out John.
I mean, a couple of your favorites for sure.
Yeah.
And then when you listen to our next episode, you'll understand why this is important. But Kody, he also directed The Meg, the very first one. So maybe when you go and finally watch The Meg, you'll really be into that.
That's actually wild, too. I did not know that. It's kind of all over the place. Rush Hour as well.
Rush Hour TV show.
Oh, TV show? Well, that sounds good.
Yeah.
But
so the thing that kind of ruined his career, and honestly ruined Nick Cage's career to a certain extent in that mid-2000s when he was like box office machine for Disney. They did the 2 National Treasures, $100 million, whatever. Him and Turteltaub make The Sorcerer's Apprentice with, what's that guy's name? Jay Baruchel. Jay Baruchel and Nick Cage make The Sorcerer's Apprentice together, and it is an absolute flop. Melina's there, Alfred.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the reason National Treasure 3 never happened. So to a certain extent, we can blame Turteltaub for that as well. That we never got National Treasure 3. Instead, we got stuck with the TV show.
It's a quick falling point, I think, going from National Treasure franchise to just the absolute bomb, like you said, the Sorcerer's Apprentice was. So definitely tough career move. I think he had a promising young start and maybe just ran out of chances with Disney. So that's pretty sad, but I'd like to see more from Johnny Boy. Obviously, he went the Meg route, which, we saw the Meg 2 and it was okay, but he probably didn't have too big a hand in that. But might have to check it out just because I like this director. But I did think that was pretty funny. Like, this guy probably is my favorite childhood director of all time. So shout out to him. Johnny, if you're listening, come on. What else are you doing in life?
I saw a tweet last night that was kind of talking about how the mid-level director that can come in and just do a shitty blockbuster, but kind of do it pretty well is kind of disappeared, because so often now studios go, well, let's grab the next up and coming indie director and force them to make whatever franchise feature we're doing. So it's this person that can create the competent big blockbuster, like your Meg 2s or your good Fast and Furious movies, don't really exist in the same way as we saw in the 90s and early 2000s with guys like Turteltaub.
That is true, and I feel like action directors today, like you said, they kind of get pulled from different places. They don't kind of come from that genre. Look at James Wan and all the fast directors. They all started out in horror and stuff. Justin Lin too. Yeah, so I don't know. I agree. I wish there were more kind of just pure action directors these days. You get that a little bit with something like.
We just watched Aliens, and it's James Cameron cooking in the '80s, making some action movies, and you can see the course of his career from there.
I guess you have a Christopher McQuarrie and some people like that, but the big kind of franchises, even the MCU, they pull Chloe Zhao and all these art house directors. So I think there's just a lost art in the action franchise a little bit.
Yeah, definitely true. Let's talk about the rest of the cast. John Candy. This is really like I would say maybe his like last great performance that he gives. I don't have a really great connection to John Candy because to me like 80s and 90s comedies are not what I always go to. Did you have a favorite performance? Spaceballs, Planes, Trains, anything like that that sticks out for you for Candy?
I mean, yeah, I'm a big Spaceballs fan as well. He's a great role in that, playing Barf, who's the riff on Chewbacca. So I think Bartholomew actually is his full name. But I think he's really good in that. But that's obviously more of an ensemble role. This is probably for me his favorite. I think he does like carry this movie really in a sense. Because there are a lot of other actors, but they're not experienced. They don't have the comedic timing that John Candy has, or can kind of perform to carry this movie to that level. So I think by far he is the best. It's hard to say that he maybe is the best performer in a lot of other movies. So mad respect to that. But yeah, I like him in like Uncle Buck and Spaceballs. I'm not crazy deep in his IMDb, if I'm being honest, but from what I've seen from him, this is by far I think his best performance.
Yeah, I would. I think I would agree with that from me. And then the rest of our main guys, Darius Jr., Sanka, Yule, all played by Dougie Doug for Sanka. Leon plays Darius. Raleigh D. Lewis plays Jr. and Malik Yoba plays Yul Brenner. I really, if you go to all these guys IMDb, this is like the thing they're known for. Do you know these guys from anything else? Have you ever really come across them anywhere else?
Not really. I looked into kind of what happened career-wise afterwise. It was somewhat interesting. Leon, so the main guy, pretty much plays Darius. He's kind of just in a bunch of other really small stuff too. He was in a Tupac movie,
Okay,
Tupac basketball movie. So
above the rim.
Yeah, above the rim. So that's kind of relevant. Dougie Doug, I think, was.
He played Little Richard in the Little Richard TV movie. I mean, I think that's probably pretty fucking huge.
That's pretty good, I guess. Yeah, shout out to that as well. And then Dougie Doug, I think he was probably one of the bigger stars in this movie of its marketing and stuff. But he kind of just fell out of Hollywood. It looked like he had some drug issues, which is obviously tough. He was in Shark Tale, though. So got to work with Scorsese directly. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. So I think that's pretty cool for him. And then the other guys, Junior, I guess he was in Narcos Mexico.
But one episode. It's weird. It's his number one listed thing, but he was only in one episode.
Well, that's tough. Maybe he kicked the bucket in there pretty quick, but hopefully it was a memorable one. But yeah, he's in a ton of other like small stuff I haven't seen either. And then Yul Brenner, who's one of my favorite characters, and I thought one of the more decent performances just because he has more to do here. He pretty much hasn't done anything after this. He's turned more towards like the producer writer role, it seems like. Which is respectable.
A lot of cop stuff, it seems like. When he does, it's like I see like New York Undercover, East New York, The Equalizer.
Makes sense. I mean,
Copland, Daddy Don't Go.
He's an intimidating guy. So I think that's a good kind of typecast role for him. Is probably like an uber serious, just shit talking cop. But I think his work behind the camera is actually pretty good too. And I feel like his line delivery in this film kind of shows that too, because he's a little bit over the top, but he's like crazy committed. Other than John Candy, I would honestly probably say Yul Brenner is my favorite character. Second favorite performance.
Yeah, I like that. I like that take. Let me get into a little bit of my initial thoughts on seeing this movie for the first time. So I think the cast is probably the highlight for me, and just the fact like the chemistry that they have together in every scene, whether it's Candy interacting with the athletes or even like the scenes when the athletes have to butt heads a little bit. I think that stuff is like really successful, and building it around those relationships is what makes this movie work, and it's what makes like the big emotional payoff at the end be successful, because you built up these strong relationships and you want to see these characters succeed at the very end. It is a 90s Disney movie. It's got a little bit of that like cheesy energy to it to a certain degree, and it's a sports movie, so you know the beats, whether they win or lose or not, you know how it's going to feel at the end. Like you know what you're getting into when you watch the movie, which I think is a good thing in a movie that can kind of hit those notes and really still be successful even when you're expecting it. It is pretty good. I enjoyed this movie overall, is what I would say.
Wow. I'll definitely take that. But I do agree. I think it's kind of got that Disney kind of like childlike quality to it. Like all these guys are pretty much grown men. The entire movie, they are acting like children.
Right. They're sitting there clinking their Coke bottles together to celebrate. They're saying mother
to the messenger.
Motherfucker.
To the man in the orange shoes. Yeah, I think obviously it's a Disney movie. I think that's why, in a sense, that I did relate to it so much as a child too. You can really put yourself kind of in these guys' shoes really, really well. I mean, even like the beginning, the pushcart race, like Sanka and these kids, they're the exact same, even though they're
literally on his team.
Yeah, it's like a 20-year age difference, but there's like no telling them apart. So I think that's a lot of fun just from a character standpoint. And then John Kinney kind of comes in, and he definitely is like the father figure leader of the team.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of morality stuff. And like you said, of course, win or lose, they're just there kind of for the experience for this one. But I think that's the other kind of interesting side of this movie too, is like the bobsled's community kind of reaction to them. Because I feel like for Disney, like they could have not have gone like, oh, everybody hates us. It could have just been like, nobody really knows why we're there, and nobody's really making fun of us. But they kind of go like a darker route of like the East Germans are like bullying them, and they get into like a bunch of fights and stuff. So I think that's kind of an interesting angle of it too, and probably more realistic than they had to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I don't know exactly like how they were treated. I would imagine they probably pulled some punches with like holding some stuff back, because I'm sure people were a lot more racist and terrible seeing these Jamaicans come and try and do some bobsledding in the 90s. It is interesting to see like the fish out of water nature of it, and when they travel to Canada, I think all that stuff really works well. And I don't think it goes like an extremely offensive route. I think it treats the material well, and it treats its characters with respect, which I definitely think is a positive.
I think the fish out of water is effective just because, well, they pretty much just go to the extremity of it too.
Yeah,
going from Jamaica to like -20 in Calgary, so that's kind of ridiculous. Of course, that's going to be kind of an extended sequence of its own of just them trying to figure out what's going on.
Kody, I know you've got some questions prepared for me.
Yeah, and we've kind of touched on a little bit of what I was going to go to in some of them already. But the first one I did want to talk more just about kind of the fish out of water concept. Like we were saying, I think it is interesting going from the hots of Jamaica to the colds of Calgary. And there's a few lines I do really love, so I just got to shout them out. The first one being, "Sanka, what you smoking, man?" "I'm not smoking, I'm breathing." If you're from anywhere cold, I think as a child that may be the funniest line I've ever heard. So shout out to that dialogue. The main overlapping question here is kind of, did you like the fish out of water story in Cool Runnings? And do you think that archetype kind of just in Disney movies is overused, I think, a little bit? But do you think that archetype overall is kind of something that we should stop doing so much? Or do you like it? Or is it kind of just in the middle somewhere? What do you think about the fish out of water? Because I feel like we have seen it a decent amount.
I think generally I do enjoy it. I think it can become very repetitive over and over, especially like, I mean, hell, we saw Barbie to a certain extent. A movie that just came out a couple weeks ago is like that same exact thing, a character who has had no agency or a life outside of the world they know goes out to a brand new world. And, in that case, it's the real world of LA, and she's shocked and all that stuff. So like, there's like, I feel like the commonalities that we see every time, the same thing that people are surprised by as they see the modern world or the world around them. But to me, it's something that I think works for a reason. And I'm okay with constantly going back to it, as long as we can kind of see, what the new twist on it, what is Greta Gerwig going to put the twist on it? Oh, it's going to be about Barbie. Cool.
Yeah.
So, as long as it's not like the same exact thing over and over, movies are constantly using like the same 10 story types over and over.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is used a lot, but I think it is just like really, really effective in a lot of really good movies. A couple that just come off to my mind off guys like The Matrix or Captain America: Winter Soldier. You can kind of change any sort of movie or even in a sequel, I think, to kind of have that concept. You can do it really well. My problem is kind of just everybody does it constantly, so it's either hit or miss. I would say it definitely is overused, but I think when it's used very well, it can be very effective. But I feel like it is something we see a lot, especially in Disney movies like this. But I'm a fan of this movie, so I'm not going to rag on it too much.
Respect.
But we can jump into the second question too, because you already brought it up. I freaking love the music in this movie. Hans Zimmer is scoring this movie.
Hans.
Like, I don't know. That just like blows my mind. I don't think before. Well, I think maybe a couple rewatches before this, I realized that. But as a kid, obviously, I don't know who the heck Hans Zimmer is. But nowadays, like, this is probably the best working guy in his industry. And he's the one doing the score for Cool Freaking Runnings. So I think that in itself is really cool. But let's talk just about the soundtrack, too, because it has that really cool, fun reggae vibe
Mm.
at the beginning. Obviously, just like the opening credits, it's a really good song. Then throughout, they just keep sprinkling in kind of the Marley reggae. So I really love that. But then, like you said, the combination of kind of the races and the end scene specifically, the ending score, I don't know why, but it definitely
teary-eyed?
it definitely brings tears to my eyes every time. I'm not gonna lie, on this rewatch, I did cry.
Okay.
So he still got it. Hans is still that guy. But yeah, I mean the overall question, am I crazy with like just nostalgia on the reggae music? What do you think about that? And then the Hans score. First off, obviously, did you cry? And then secondly, do you think Hans has done anything better?
Oh, wow. Okay. First of all, I did not cry. I did
Okay.
find it to be a very emotional moment.
Wow.
I wrote it down in the most. I mean, even like the very first time we hear like the Hans score at the pushcart race, and then
Yeah.
like, or like when they go to the real race, the foot race, and they trip, and it's just like the way the score changes.
That's a devastating one.
Yeah, so I think it's really consistent and good throughout. And then, like you said, the soundtrack, there's some recognizable songs that kind of feel familiar, but then also some cool, like new reggae stuff that I had never heard before, which I think really just adds to the aesthetic and the vibe of the movie as a whole. Hans Zimmer, is this his best work? Probably not.
What would you put up there?
I mean,
Inception?
I like the Inception score. I think the Interstellar score maybe is his best.
Pretty good.
The Pirates theme, the Pirates of the Caribbean pure theme is like probably one of the best that he's created. I mean, even like The Lion King in the 90s. I mean, like that's the thing. You look at like his 90s Disney work, there's some incredible stuff in there. I mean, he's got 236 just pure composer credits. So like the man has been working for literally, I mean, let's see, what's his first credit on the site?
Muppet Treasure Island.
Success and the Best Revenge, 1984. So he's coming up on his fourth decade working in the industry.
That's crazy. So. He's still in high demand as well. So I think that's definitely a testament to him. But yeah, I think he really knocked it out of the park here. I mean, I would probably put it in my personal like top 10, but the guy has so many kind of just stuff that he has done. It's probably hard to rank some of the stuff just because it all is probably really, really, really good. So shout out to him. And yeah, the reggae stuff, I think it's still good. It obviously just fits the tone of the movie pretty well. The opening song especially I do like. It's like
exactly, yeah.
But just like the opening titles of and then going through the credits in that song is like really, really nostalgic for me. Like that's probably one of my favorite parts of the movie, honestly. The opening scene with him just like running around.
Yeah.
Just because I've seen that the most, obviously. But it's kind of just cool for me in retrospective seeing like a Hans Zimmer score on one of my childhood movies. I think that's really cool. And it is powerful.
I feel like it's a good trivia question too. Be like, who did the score of Cool Runnings? Hans Zimmer? What the fuck?
Yeah, who's gonna know that other than us? So we should ask that on our next trivia with RCR.
Yeah,
because they're definitely not listening to this episode.
It's a call out.
If you're listening to this, guys, call me out, but I doubt we'll see it. But yeah, you want to move on to the last question?
Yeah, let's hear it. What do you got?
Shout out, Hans. I want this one to be focused a little bit more on the action of the film.
Ooh.
So there's some good sports stuff. I think obviously them learning to bobsled kind of at the Olympics is kind of tough. I mean, it's hard to like, go into an Olympic event and you've never been on the track before.
Yeah.
You've never done the sport before. So I think that's kind of weird. I think like all the races and stuff, the pushcart race at the top, I think is actually really well done. And obviously that's kind of the main action set piece, the first act of the movie. But after that, I mean, I think the stunt work and kind of like them going down the hill is good. The one shot of them not making it into the bobsled, I think is really funny as well. But then obviously too, the main thing I want to talk about is the big bar fight. But I just want to get your thoughts on that in general. So we can definitely talk about sports action, but the bar fight in particular, does it bring up any kind of other directors' kind of styles, any Tarantino, any McTiernans, anything like that?
Well, I did think Tarantino, because there's a shot earlier in the film of John Candy's feet, a pull-up shot from the feet. So that was where the Tarantino vibes were coming from.
Rise and shine. It's butt whipping time. Great feet shot.
I wouldn't really describe the action as extremely electric in the way it's shot or extremely athletic. I don't know. That was a pretty bad bar fight scene. Was it did it feel reminiscent of somebody's work to you specifically?
A little bit McTiernan, but not really. I feel like it is kind of just that cheasy action in the 80s.
Well, it's kind of like, okay, what are we, like halfway, 3/4 to the movie? Let's get a bar fight in there. Like, we gotta throw something.
Of course, they make like the Germans the bad guy too, and then Sokka comes flying in with like a cowboy hat and everything. So I think it is being like pro America, even in like this Jamaican bobsled movie, which is kind of annoying. I don't know. I think it's fun, but it's definitely not necessary.
Yeah, I agree with that overall. I did want to talk about like the way they shot the actual kart racing a little bit, and like those action scenes, because the thing that I appreciated most about it is how like it was different every time, and it almost got better. Like I enjoyed the races each time. Each time they did a time trial, I felt like they broke out a new trick, or they were trying something to just add a little bit of spice to it and make it more interesting. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I do like most of the Olympics sequences of them in the bobsled. I like the specific shot too. Like obviously they showed Derice a lot, but kind of when they go through that little tunnel with the slits, and it's just like on his goggles, and it's just going.
Yeah.
Like it's some intense stuff, and they showed earlier too. Like you just have to know every turn on the track, so it's literally just all in the driver.
Memory,
Yeah, and then of course I like the shots too, like their sled, which is really rickety, kind of falling apart.
Yeah, it's really good. The in the final fight where it's like you see the little insert shots of the screws kind of slowly coming loose, the bolts falling apart. Anything that's inside the sled when it's moving, I think, is really cool and a different look.
And they use some real life footage.
Yeah, I did see that.
Which is definitely cool. And I mean, some of that real life stuff too.
Should we talk about the real life of nature of it all too right now?
Well, yeah, we can just throw it all together. But I thought it was interesting at the end, like when they crash, like a bunch of the crash footage was like real life stuff, just like their heads like banging up against the side and stuff. So that's tough, obviously. I don't think they really finished the race in the same way, I would guess. I don't actually know. But I'm guessing there was a lot of dissimilarities with the story in real life. But I like how they at least brought in a little bit of footage, like showing like that it did actually happen.
Yeah, so I did want to talk about, I do have some information about like the true nature of everything, the real Jamaican team. So first of all, the reason they didn't get into the competition was because they applied late to get in. So it wasn't like they were like, oh, we don't want you guys in.
Yeah.
They applied late, but then the Prince Albert of Monaco, who had previously competed as a bobsledder, he like led a petition to reverse the decision to let them in. So then they got let in. They were never really considered a medal contender. There was never any thought that maybe they could make a push in that final time trial.
Yeah.
They crashed on their third run, which was actually their second to last scheduled run. They finished 24th, 25th, and 26th out of the 26 total contestants, which was not great. They finished 26th overall, so last place, and with a cumulative line of just over 3 minutes for the total. They would have had to complete a world record shattering time under 48 seconds to win in their final run.
Yeah. So they weren't as good as portrayed.
The movie also implies that they're the only people from a tropical country to ever compete, and that's actually also not true. They were the only Caribbean nation to ever feature in the 4-man, but Netherlands, Antilles, and then also the U.S. Virgin Islands had sent people to the Olympics in the past. So, not entirely rare for somebody from a sunny area.
I mean, still pretty rare though.
They weren't the first, but still a cool story nonetheless. And then the crash in the film, it's because of mechanical and structure failures. In reality, it happened because of driver inexperience, going too fast, not understanding the turn was too high. So that kind of changes also. It's like, they really did crash because they hadn't been bobsledding for very long. They didn't really know what they were doing fully. So I think that real life stuff kind of really takes away from the movie. Also, I think the John Candy character is kind of way different as well. So overall, I don't know. When I read that, I was like, this is kind of dumb. And also when they did crash, they didn't like pick it up and carry it across the line to thunderous applause. I think there was like some scattered clapping for the people, but overall it was like,
That is tough because that's probably like my favorite scene in the entire movie is the ending. So that being the one that is like very unrealistic is pretty tough. And that is kind of weird that they changed so much. I don't hate it that much. It's just less of a biopic and more, I guess, just a fun Jamaican movie. Yeah. I mean, John Candy, I doubt any of that stuff is really true about. I don't think they would let a cheater anywhere.
Well, that was I did have questions. Like, if a guy who's previously cheated, would he be allowed to be a coach? I feel like probably not.
No. The Olympics,
the IOC is all over that.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not shocked they kind of finished last. They definitely had a massive disadvantage from the start. In the text, the ending text, they said that they did come back 4 years later. So possibly they didn't get the last end, but it's still highly likely.
Yeah, they do. I mean, that's the thing. They now have a consistent team that I think is like, more trained. And it's built a little bit of a culture.
Are they still? I don't know if they still have teams, honestly. It's kind of just impractical because you can't practice.
94, 98, 2002, and then 2014 and 22.
Shout out too. I don't know why the Jamaicans love the bobsled so much. I guess it is kind of that idea of sprinters make the best bobsledders, which I don't hate. Yeah, that is interesting. I would guess they've never done too good. I mean, nothing against the Jamaicans. Obviously, they are unbelievable athletes, but you don't have a track to practice on in your home, your home country. So
they've not had a lot of success historically.
It's just tough. They're at a disadvantage. I feel like. So that is interesting. They keep going back.
This is a big question, Kody. As a childhood favorite, is this a movie you will show to your future kids?
I mean, this is not going to be a surprising answer. I don't think. But I would say yeah. With this question too, this is not something I've given like a crazy amount of thought to, of like what movies should you show your children and what movies should you not. Like I said, in my childhood, I wasn't really allowed to watch anything that wasn't like a super G rating. So that's not the best, I guess, thing to grade it off of. But I would say 100%. Yeah. I mean, this movie, the kind of, like I said, the childness of the actors, I think would be very easy to relate to. And it does have a good message, never give up on your dreams. Even if something bad happens to you, kind of turn that into a positive if you can in any way. So I like the messaging behind it a lot too. And I think like I said, it's just a fun, sports, Jamaican bobsled team, kind of comedy, Disney sports film. So I think it's a good combination. Obviously, got good direction, really good score. I think when I
teach your kids about some fucking good cinema,
that's what I'm saying too. Like, I don't want to show my kids, like, even if they are kids movies, like, kind of just like movies I don't like or movies that are bad. Like, I want them to be kind of, movie snobs as well. So I think this would be a good starting point. Probably not the best kids movie of all time, but 100% I would show this movie to my kids.
My big thing is I don't know if I'll ever watch it again. So it's like maybe if I am gonna watch it. Probably with a child of some sort in the future. So maybe. Not going to rule it out, but it's not going to be on first on the list of like, this is what the kid has to see.
When we both have kids, and everybody comes over.
You can watch, you can watch Child. Throw on a little Cool Runnings for the
little background music. Yeah,
exactly.
You'll see it again for sure. That's 100%.
Just not front to back is the dream. Only in pieces. All right, Kody. And then the last thing, do you think in 2023 that this movie still holds up as it did in 1993?
When we touch on this a little bit, I mean, there is a little bit of ugly stuff. I don't love the way they handled all the Jamaican characters, and especially all like East German characters and the Russians too. The Russians are kind of dicks in this movie as well. But I think just from the simplicity standpoint of a Disney sports film, it stands up. But there's a lot of things you can kind of point out and be like, yeah, that probably wouldn't be in the movie today, or they probably should have done that in a different light. Personally, of course, like I said, nostalgia goggles, I think it does hold up. But this is a very subjective movie, I would think. The comedy being kind of hit or miss, and then kind of a bit of the more childness factor as well to all the characters. I can see very easily why people wouldn't like this movie, but I think for what it is, and it knows what it is, I think it's pretty effective.
Yeah, I don't think the comedy ever like suffers too much from like the 90s nature of it all. I think it suffers more just from like it being a kids movie, and that's the way it doesn't hold up. Not necessarily just because it was made in 93.
Yeah. I mean, there's some weird like plot lines, threads too, where it's like Yul Brynner wants to live in Buckingham Palace, and Sanka is just like he's like this 30-year-old who like still reads comic books and just will never grow up, it seems. So and like the kissing booth stuff, there's a lot of weird stuff I feel like, but I think it from a general standpoint, story wise, it holds up okay.
I agree with that overall. Any final thoughts on Cool Runnings? You glad I finally got to I appreciate it. Watch it.
I'm happy. It's been another one of the Star Trek situations where
I'll finally get the references at the very end.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and I think as well, this movie is just crazy quotable. So that's probably my favorite thing to do with it is just throw out random quotes. We'll keep the nostalgia goggles, obviously rolling along with Small Soldiers, but I'm excited for some other nostalgia movies from me upcoming. Obviously, Ratatouille is an upcoming episode to look out for. And we'll keep doing. I think these are fun episodes too, just because it's really differing perspectives on movies that one of us has seen it, a billion times, and the other one's watching it for the first time. So I'm happy we finally got you on the cool running.
I'm glad at the very least I did get to experience it, and we had to do it for the podcast because it wasn't happening otherwise. And we know the very same is true about you watching Small Soldiers. So let's move on over to that. The reason I wanted to talk about Small Soldiers, very similarly, we've referenced it many times on the podcast. It's a movie that I don't even think you were aware of until I told you about. And even then, as I would tell you more and more about it, you would just become more and more confused and questioning of like, what the fuck is this movie? What's it really about? I think I expanded what it was about a little bit and just talking of like making shit up and kind of trying to just make it sound cooler than it is. And I honestly hadn't seen it in probably 5 or 6, 7, 8 years.
Oh, wow.
So like there was a little bit of that nature even for me of like, hey, I really want to rewatch this movie. And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to make Kody get in on it as well.
Yeah, that's fair. Kind of vice versa. I like that. I'm surprised it's been that long to rewatch for you. How many times do you think you've seen this film overall?
Ooh, well, it's hard. I mean, maybe like 15. I feel like I watched it a lot as a kid, and I don't even remember exactly. Maybe we owned it, or maybe it would have. Because the thing is, it's like a Universal movie, but for some reason, I have memories of seeing it through Disney, and I don't know if there was ever a connection. I would say the biggest reason I haven't watched it is just like availability. It's not really a movie you can find anywhere. I think we both had to rent it to watch it for this.
We did.
So that kind of hurts for sure.
Oh, it's a tough $290, or I think it was $275 for Small Soldiers. So rip that. But I don't know why. It seems like they're kind of trying to hide this movie a little bit. It's available obviously on Amazon, but then you have to rent it. But it's not like on Showtime or any of the other.
Well, not even I mean, it's like a DreamWorks Universal, so like Peacock would make sense for it to come. But
I mean, it would make sense literally on any streaming platform. I feel like just because like if people want to watch it, they should be able to watch it. But yeah, I think it's an interesting pick. When was this movie released? It had to be obviously early 2000s. I would think.
1998.
Really? Okay. I think it's very of its time. These are both 90s movies, and I would say that's similar to Cool Runnings as well. Yeah, I think this movie is very interesting, and it's got a lot of kind of bigger themes for a kids movie.
So in warming up with this movie, I'll say one bad thing, you say one good thing. For me, I think the bad thing is that it feels very 90s. It's like a 90s studio movie where it felt like there's probably like 30 different versions of the script that exist. It kind of went through a couple different iterations. There's some like character beats that feel like maybe in another version of it, it would be more fleshed out, or we would see more of that. It's like, oh, here's just that one little bit that's remaining from the first edition that didn't, stick throughout. There's like pop songs that are kind of mixed in where you can tell the studio spent a little bit of money to get the music in the movie. Mm-hmm. It's got, some messaging mixed in, but overall, I would say the fact that it's written by like 5 different people and that there's just those threads that don't really fully connect, whether it be like the love story or like him being a bad boy, I think that all kind of like harms the movie in creating like the cohesive final product.
I like that a lot. I think 5 writers is never a really good idea in a movie, and especially in a kids movie like this, I can kind of get mud a little bit. Just talking about the positives here. This is a little bit difficult. For me to just kind of venture off into one specific positive, but it's kind of along the same lines. Like, I think the best parts of this movie for me is kind of the meta-ness of it. Obviously, you have kind of the whole toy industry in itself is kind of an interesting angle, and then they throw in David Cross into the fold, and I really don't think you can go wrong there. I think David Cross is by far my favorite person in this movie, my favorite character in this movie. And that's pretty much just because it's David Cross, to be completely honest. But they do lean into the meta-ness of, what should we do to kind of, promote these toys? And they're literally making a movie about the toys at the same time. So I think that's a fun aspect of it. And like you said, I think because that's not really focused on in the movie a ton. That's probably like a quarter of it. So I think maybe in an earlier script that had, massive bearing on the movie more.
Well, because then, like, right at the end, there's even, not to get too far ahead to, like, spoiler territory, but, like, at the end, Dennis literally, like, looks at the camera and he's like, this would make a great commercial or whatever.
Like, I think that's fun. I think if you, like, similar to, like...
You want to see more of that.
Yeah, like a last action hero kind of idea. Make that the entire movie. And I think I would be more on board with it. But obviously, they just focus more on, which probably interests the kids more, because this is the meta-ness. The kids are probably like, I don't really understand this, but this guy's in the Chipmunks, so I like him. But the kid stuff is more, focused on the action, and then, the kid's love story as well. That I definitely have some issues with and we'll get into. But I do like David Cross a lot. I think he was your number one underrated actor working in the industry. And I tend to agree with that. Shout out to Chipmunks and, of course, Tobias from Arrested Development, one of the great forgotten roles in modern television. But
I just blew myself.
I think he's I think he's good in this movie. He's really not too bad in anything. So shout out David Cross.
Small Soldiers is an interesting one to explain. You admit that there's a little bit of the meta-ness to it. So basically the concept of the film, David Cross and Jay Moore are these two scientists who work for a toy company. They're toy designers. And their company is bought out by Dennis Leary's larger Globotech firm. Basically, he's going to come in and their whole thing is they take military components and they put them into everyday working things to, serve the consumer in an interesting way, whatever. So Jay Moore and David Cross then get, access to this military technology. Jay Moore's character kind of, is an idiot and orders some super chips to put into these new toys.
It's microchips,
new, right? Microprocessors. These new special microprocessors from the military. And they put them into these new toys that they want to be super high tech and that can talk to you and interact and learn. And essentially creates a line of evil militaristic toys led by Tommy Lee Jones, and then a line of these kind of alien Gorgamite toys. And they exist to kind of almost do battle with each other, and they're programming specifically the militaristic toys, having, an intense rage and a desire to kill the Gorgamites. Those toys then end up on a toy shelf of a child, and his dad owns the toy store. The toy store gets destroyed because of that. And then, some hijinks ensue as the toys come back to attack the house.
True, you left out, there's also a big romantic element.
Kirsten Dunst, our lead build actor of this movie.
Introducing?
Not exactly, I would say, but our lead actor, Kirsten Dunst, is there as well to serve as the love interest who plays hostage.
I would say that is kind of like the majority of the story, obviously. I feel like there's a big kind of focus on the love story a little bit, especially in like the second and third act. But the relationship between like the small soldiers and the aliens, I thought was an interesting part of the plot and something they probably could have gone into more. I think it's just interesting how they have it set up of the small soldiers are like they're 100% the bad guys. And in a sense, I feel like they are like pretty much just, the American military. So I think that's an interesting angle and something I really didn't expect from a movie called Small Soldiers. It's the small soldiers kind of just being these ruthless dicks who just want to kill people at all costs. So for a kids movie, it does have some darker tones as well, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about this movie is that it's a movie about how we take the American military complex and package that up. We hand it off to little kids and we serve it to them in the form of toys and movies and entertainment. And literally this movie itself is, again, like working in response to that, and is like that idea of like, we're going to make this movie for kids about, little soldiers and toys, but we're going to Trojan horse those ideas of like, that's actually a bad thing that we're doing that we're like indoctrinating our young men and women with this idea that, this is what they can grow up to be. And it's the same for the women, the female characters. Kirsten Dunst has her like Barbie dolls, pseudo Barbie dolls that kind of, we see the same thing, those kind of ideas play out in this movie as well. And that, brings up that I think this is a really interesting movie to talk about in context of the newly released Barbie film.
Yeah, that's true. There's an extended Barbie sequence, which is a little bit terrifying. And I feel like as a kid too, did you have any moments where like it was kind of too scary?
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. I think like to a certain degree, like this movie is it's definitely more adult than Cool Runnings, I would say.
Oh yeah.
And I would say it's a movie that could very well be like, you could spin it as a purely adult movie, or at least like you could make it like a PG-13, more like tween teen film. If you add, I think that's almost where it hurts it a little bit, where they pull the punches and they pull back and they have to be like, hey, this is just a kid's movie. So we're going to do a cool action scene here. Or we're going to, make the toys look cool in this scene, where it's like the ideas you're playing with could really expand into something more mature.
That's true. And I think the way that, like I said, with just how they deal with the small soldiers, in a sense, they are kind of just like American warmongers who obviously disrespect women a lot, and they go into that, which is fun.
Well, and then also like, because Tommy Lee Jones plays the leader. I can't remember his name.
No.
colonel or whatever. But like even throughout, like they're constantly like saying lines from movies, or they're making references to like other forms of military propaganda. So it's like they're constantly talking in response to that and like playing off those ideas.
I mean, they have like the Borg catchphrase too. What is it? It's not resistance. It's futile. It's something else close to that. They just basically rip off Star Trek in that line. If I'm being completely honest. I don't know. I didn't really like that aspect of the movie a ton. The small soldiers aspect. I like kind of the weird aliens, then their relationship kind of with the little kid. I think that was probably my favorite part of just story wise, other than the meta-ness. But I think we have to talk a little bit about the Kristen Dunst and the kid's relationship, because that really took on a decent amount of the flick, I feel like. And
Alan Abernathy. Alan Gregory Smith is the actor.
Shout out Gregory Smith. I think we'll get into a little more of maybe what he's doing now. I don't think it's a ton, but I didn't think he was terrible in this movie, especially for being like a lead kid. It's obviously a lot of pressure, I feel like, going into a script like this where it is kind of all over the place for him to kind of carry. I thought Kirsten Dunst was actually not terrible either for such an early role for her. I was actually pretty impressed with just her overall chops. I mean, their love story stuff, it's obviously like teenagers, so it's not something that's going to connect, super heavily, but I thought it was okay. Just kind of like the writing stuff of like, she already has a boyfriend. He's like this bad boy who's gotten kicked out of schools. It's like, I don't know. I feel like we've seen that 100 times, and I don't.
Do you buy Alan as a big troublemaker, a 2-time expelled?
I mean, I guess he's just like acting out because his parents are dicks, basically.
Yeah.
So I guess that's fair. Like maybe I would do the same thing if it came to that. And he's basically running this entire toy store by himself. And how old is he? Like 12 years old, 13?
He's definitely a middle schooler that just gets left in the toy store over the weekend. But his dad's like, I don't trust you.
Yeah. But you're running the entire store the entire week. So it is what it is. But I thought at least their acting was good enough where I was like, I don't hate this plot line entirely. And it's cool to see Kirsten Dunst in an early performance.
I think it is cool. Definitely, like, I don't even think I realized when I like repicked this movie. I was like, oh yeah, Kirsten Dunst is like the lead of this film, which I think is definitely cool to talk about. Let's talk about the rest of the cast. So first of all, director Joe Dante. Are you familiar with his other big film?
Joe Dante. Name sounds familiar, but I don't think so.
Well, believe it or not, he's the director of Gremlins.
Okay, yeah.
Which there's actually even some Gizmo references used in this. I think it's the password that David Cross's character has. And I think even later they like call him Gizmo, or they call the other guy Gizmo.
This is like 15 years after Gremlins too.
But yeah, but to me, like it kind of makes a lot of sense that the guy who directed Gremlins, it's kind of, in a way it's similar to like a toy coming to life.
This would be the guy to hire. Honestly. That's a good pick from the studio.
And to me, like I think he does a really good job. Something that I appreciate a lot about this movie is like the CGI. For it being 1998, I think all of the like toy stuff and the moving around, I think it all looks really good. Like there's a couple scenes where it's like, okay, this is some early video game animation type stuff, but for the most part, they use it very well. They're very smart about how they show it.
Yeah, I actually agree with that completely too. It wasn't stop motion, was it? Was this all digitally done?
I think so, yeah.
That's impressive. It does look really good. I think that's something I definitely took for granted throughout the film is these soldiers, these toys, all these monsters, they do look very realistic, like in a real life setting as well. So like late 90s, CGI wise, I think that is actually
1/3 puppetry and the rest CGI.
Nice, okay. So a little bit of Frank Oz action in there as well too. So I respect that a lot. But yeah, I think this movie is honestly, it's pretty well directed. I have more story issues, I think, than the directing. So shout out Joe Dante. I think Gremlins is a good flick, and it does a lot of similar things too. So yeah, like I said, I think it makes sense to have Joe Dante at the helm.
Exactly. I mean, it's kind of the thing we were talking about a little bit with Turtle Tap, where it's like he's the guy. You're making a studio movie that's kind of like a kid's film with some bigger ideas.
Yeah,
you're gonna things coming to light. Like it makes sense. Like let's bring in Joe Dante. He might not be an Oscar-winning director, but he's a guy that knows how to handle this kind of subject material.
Especially like it's just similar kind of characters. Like it's small little puppet people. Like that seems like Joe Dante's stick. So I think that's an easy choice. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Kirsten Dunst. Obviously, Spider-Man, I think, is the huge thing. And that's just, 3 years later that she gets cast in this. Wow. Is this the youngest Kirsten Dunst performance you've ever seen?
I think it's gotta be. I don't know. She's obviously, I think, a pretty well-working child. But this is very, very young, I feel like, for her.
Yeah, I mean,
Star
she
Trek
she got
Next
her
Generation.
first role in 1988. She was in one episode of Star Trek in '93. She appears in like Interview with the Vampire, Young Strong. She jumps around. Jumanji, I think, is probably the one
That's
that
true,
really
too.
is like her big break, and that's probably even why she's first billed in this movie. Just 3 years later. But I think for me, this is definitely my first interaction with Kirsten Dunst, and then Spider-Man.
I probably did see Jumanji before this film, to be fair. Like I said, I think that is probably the one that people remember of her as being a really good child actor. But this is a good performance too. And then, of course, yeah, going into the Spider-Man franchise, that's kind of where she really took off. And I mean, since then, she's pretty much been in anything and everything. So shout out to her there. I do think she's a pretty good actress overall, honestly. I think she gets a little bit of hate just from the Mary Jane performance. But again, I think that's a lot more of writing and Tobey Maguire, just the overall sappiness of those movies. I don't think she could really do a ton of them.
She does not have a lot to work with from Sam Raimi there.
I looked up her Star Trek Next Generation performance. It's actually a pretty interesting one. It's like her mother. She's like she can like read minds and stuff. Like her mom died when she was really young, so she's just going through like a lot of childhood trauma. So kind of like a more serious role in TV too. So that's honestly probably the first thing I ever saw her in. Touching that a billion times. But shout out to a child, Kirsten Dunst. I think her and Drew Barrymore put him in the Child Hall of Fame.
I'm down for that. In the 90s. Alan Abernathy, our character, played by Gregory Smith. He's the guy that has not really been as successful. He was in The Patriot as Thomas Martin, which I would imagine, is he the son of... Yeah, he's the son of Mel Gibson in The Patriot. So like that's kind of a big role. That's just 2 years later.
Yeah.
Everwood, he was on for 90 episodes from 2002 2006. So if you've got any fans of that, he was doing some TV, some Rookie Blue for 70 episodes. But the thing that really interested me here, Superman and Lois. He's the director of 9 episodes, so he's kind of gotten a little bit behind the camera. And I haven't seen Superman and Lois, but I know Jackson's a big fan of it. So shout out to him for putting in the work there.
I've heard it's not terrible, and that's really cool. Actually, he seems like he's more of a comic book guy. So maybe I'll delve into kind of what else he's done television-wise, because evidently that's not the worst TV show ever. And if he's a big comic guy, I feel like you might as well go that route. But that is pretty cool. I would never guess that.
David Cross, we kind of already talked about. You highlighted some of your performances. Got to shout out Eternal Sunshine, Spotless Mind, Megamind, Kung Fu Panda, and then, of course, Men in Black, too. It's great in Men in Black.
A lot of very small roles for David Cross, of course, being as underrated as he is, but I think I stand out in pretty much everything.
Jay Moore, you don't really know him as much, but I feel the thing about this movie is we get like deeper in the cast, and we can talk about like Dennis Leary and some of the more guys like Tommy Lee Jones, but like
of course,
every voice actor is like a 90s, 80s character actor, like that guy, where it's like they pull good, strong character actors. In like the 80s and 90s, there were so many of them that would like just travel from movie to movie and pull in fun performances. So like every voice of the Gorgonites, every military guy had probably played a military guy in some movie before. So I think that's great about the movie.
These days, we just have David Dismalshin, basically.
As that guy.
Yeah, in the 80s and 90s, there was like 50 David Dismalshin.
Yeah, we're getting like Frank Langanella playing the main Gorgonite. It's just it is cool to see. Like you can go deep into some IMDb's, and we honestly don't even have the time. His dad, Kevin Dunn, is another just like, okay, maybe I don't know what he's from, but I've seen him in 1,000 things. Oh, he's in Transformers as Shia LaBeouf's dad. Like stuff like that.
That's cool, actually. Yeah, he's not a terrible actor.
Now I have some questions for you, Cody.
Special questions.
So first one that I want to hit you off with is a little bit of a brain teaser. So this movie, it's about how small soldiers, little toys, fight humans. So my question for you, Cody, in typical Cody versus fashions, how many toys could you take before it's too many toys?
That's a good question. Depends. Am I giving weapons here? What's available to me? Just the same thing.
It's whatever's around you.
Same thing in the movie.
You're in a house.
So who am I? Am I Alan Abernathy?
You're you. What 10 toys?
Do I have
you could take 20 toys? You could take 30. Like when is it? Yeah. It's similar to the argument of like how many preschoolers could you fight? How many little toys?
Fun question. I think I can take a few. Of course, it depends how much weaponry they have.
How many corn cob holders they can shoot at you. Like that was a very visceral memory for me as a child. Like that's probably the thing that stands out the most about this movie. Is corn cob to the leg.
Very creative. If I have like a baton, I'm just smacking these all
Golf
over
club?
the place. Yeah, like give me a baseball bat, give me a wiffle ball bat, and everything's flying. But I would probably put it around like 30 or 40. Like these guys, they are experienced. I think generals and stuff. But I'm a giant, so it's gonna take a lot to kind of take me down. I think, and there'd probably have to be some sort of element of surprise, I would think, to take me down. But I like my chances, especially if like the monster squad has my back too. If I do get in a little bit
Get
of
some
trouble,
reinforcement.
yeah, they can just fly in and kind of help out on that end. But I like my odds. Cody versus, I think I would win this movie. And yeah, I don't think that in this specific movie enough. I don't think there's enough to keep me down, if I'm being honest. But I like that. Shout out Cody versus. What about you? Do you think you would win this movie? How many do you think it would actually take?
Win, I mean, like, through the power of teamwork and the Glowatech guys kind of show up at the end.
Yeah.
Sure, I'd make it out. I don't think 30 or 40. I think maybe like 20, 25 is around my cap. Because I don't know. They just start to overwhelm you, dude. Start cutting your Achilles tendon and you're done for.
Like the Barbies and stuff too. Like once they
start jumping from out of like, that's the thing. You may think they're all right there. They sneak around.
If they get you enclosed in a smaller room, you're gonna have some issues.
Absolutely.
It's all about spacing, I think, in this instance.
All right, next question for you, Cody. Did you play with toys as a kid? Were you like a guy that?
I think a little bit. That is a good question. Yeah, I think I did. I had a lot of like Hot Wheels cars and stuff.
Were you ever like a military toy guy, or was it always just cars?
Not
I guess
much.
with your mom.
Yeah, it was tough
thing.
with like strict parents like that too. I was more like the stuffed animal kid who would just collect all that, and then just have like random stuff with that, big parties and stuff.
Build-A-Bear guy?
I feel Build-A-Bears, yeah. Big sports Build-A-Bears where you get like the football or baseball one.
I had a frog, just a cub.
Yeah, and then I would do stuff with like I said, like big cars and just like a bunch of races or big sports stuff, like get a bunch of baseball cards and just actual playoff games and stuff. So I had a bunch of toys, and we had tons of toys as kids, but it probably wasn't as much like guns and shooting and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was more like family friendly, I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. My toys were definitely in the family friendly area, more of like the things I was interested in, whether it be like Star Wars or I feel like Ninja Turtles was like the big thing. But even beyond that, like I never really even played with toys that much. Like I would get toys and then I would kind of be like, what am I fucking supposed to do with this? Like I don't know. I wasn't a super creative kid where I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this. And I think maybe that's why like this movie is cool to me, because it's like, oh, here are some toys that like will play back with you, and like you'll be able to, you can be by yourself and still have a good time and communicate with them. So like that was a really cool idea to me. Whereas as someone who like didn't really play with toys that way.
It's like the dog who like does backflips and you just like sit there and watch it. Like it's kind of entertaining in itself, and you don't have to do anything with it.
Yeah.
But I do like that concept of if there was like small soldiers like this, I would probably buy them just because like you can just sit there and kind of watch them do their thing. You don't actually have to play with them, which is definitely an advantage.
Yeah, and it's not violence, Cody. It's action.
True. Also, I mean, did you have any like Nerf guns or anything growing up? Like,
no,
really,
no Nerf guns.
We had a little bit of that, but
my mom was like, my dad had, this was my brother and sister, but my dad had to like be like, hey, it's okay if they have lightsabers. It's gonna be all right. They're not gonna break into the lightsaber cabinet and cut somebody's arm off.
We sound like we have similar moms, honestly. But shout out to the moms.
Shout out Amy. Shout out Michelle.
Yeah, maybe listen. Probably not.
Who knows?
Yeah, toys. It was definitely nervous, I think, for me as well. But I wish I had more Ninja Turtle stuff like you. But that'd be dope. Little Krang. Do you have a little Krang?
I had the thing I liked. We watched the Michael Bay turtle movies this week, and in the second one, the like big bus that they have that like shoots the fucking things. I had that, so like that was like a cool thing to see in the movie. Also, like the early toys for me were Rescue Rangers, which is probably like the closest thing to this. That was more of like firefighters and police officers and like that kind of world as opposed to like military, which was more acceptable.
You get that too? What was those shit called, dude? Is that what it was called? You're opening my childhood memory.
Cody's being.
We did have some toys, I guess. So we had this castle thing with a bunch of like knights and stuff, and then these other like hero people. I don't remember what they were called. They were called something similar. There was a movie about it too, and it was like they literally just rescue people.
Well, I think there is a rescue.
It's like
There's like a whole
heroes
TV
or something.
Rescue Heroes.
Yeah, that is what it's called. Okay, so we had a bunch of those too, and that was just like Yeah, I've seen that movie probably 100 times.
Oh yeah.
But it's just like firefighters.
Watch
and-
Freon. Maybe that'll be the next
Shit.
swap.
Dude,
We'll bring somebody else.
I
in.
have not thought about that movie probably in like 20 years. So shout out to it. I had like the sledgehammer guy who's a badass. There's like this underwater guy. Yeah, that could be next on the KHAP Childhood Classics.
Yeah, my mom had a daycare for a while, so we had a lot more toys. Like we had a big collection of those, but I didn't necessarily always play with them, especially as I got older.
Yeah.
Playing by yourself is never fun. I'll tell you that.
Still true.
Small shoulders need that.
Still true in today's age, yeah.
My last question for you, Kody. Which character would you say you related to the most in this movie?
From my childhood experience,
just as a person.
I think
Who would you play in the movie?
Okay, I think watching it as an adult now, I would probably say one of the writer characters, either David Cross.
I think you're Jay Moore. I think you're the guy who
I feel like
he gets in trouble ordering bad chips with the wrong password.
That's the thing. Like, I want to be David Cross, but I feel like I would lean a little bit more towards the Jay Moore, just because he's like, dude, like I don't really care. Like, let's just make this, and just because I think it'll be successful. Like, I'm not the ultra creative one where I'm like, oh, let's do these monsters because I want to teach kids about like environmentals and stuff, and be like, no, I think like the soldiers should probably make a lot more money, so let's go that route. But yeah, I like Jay Moore. Jay Moore's character is a lot of fun in this too. Like, he is probably not the best guy, but he's still having a lot of fun, I think, throughout the movie. So I would probably say his character.
I think I'm one of the dads. I think I'm the dad who's probably the dick dad that's like cutting down the tree. That's me. I'll be Kirsten Dunst.
I think you're more of the Alan Abernathy.
More Kevin. Maybe I'm a mix. I don't know. I don't know if I'd leave the kid with the fucking store. That's messed up. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'll take either dad. I just want to be a good father to my children.
I put you in the nicer dad, I guess.
Thank you.
But I feel like, I don't know why, but you really remind me of the main kid. Bad boy.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a rebel. What can I say? Big question here. Would you show this movie to your future kids? As a dad, I think this is definitely one I'm going to have to break out to the kids. I do think it's a little bit of a older movie for the children now.
I would say, yeah, it depends on the age range. I would say after like, I don't even know, like 10, I would say sure. But early on, I'd probably say fuck now. I don't know, this movie, it's kind of
I just don't think you'd really appreciate it in the same way. I think you've got to have, I think there's definitely a sweet spot though of like seeing it where it's like, it'll really hit just right when you can kind of start to understand it, but it's still kid enough for you.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think nostalgia has a lot to do with it as well. So if I showed my kids to it early, they would probably love it as well. That's always the thing about, like, I guess showing little kids movies is obviously you might not connect to it, but they probably will because it's made directly for them. So yeah, kids movie, I think I'd show it to them eventually. Just maybe take a little bit of time.
Do you think it still holds up in 2023?
I mean, in some parts, yes. In some parts, no. Like I said, I think the look of it, the visual style holds up pretty well. And the acting is like not bad, surprisingly, for a kid's 90s movie. But thematically, I don't love a lot of the stuff. And I genuinely don't even think he would be made today. Just because it is kind of talking shit about the American military a lot, which people don't usually love. So it'd probably get like a lot of cancellation hate just from certain side politically, but I don't know. I think like I said, in some parts, yeah, but in some parts definitely no, it doesn't hold up.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I think it's like in some ways some of the ideas it's touching on have almost become so obvious to like mainstream audiences now, and it's also like, I don't know, the way we've progressed, we've kind of just like continued to sell military to kids and kind of just decided that like it's okay and that's the way it's going to be, whether it be through like video, and I'm not, one way or another, whatever, but like Marvel movies, like those are still fucking military propaganda that every kid like experiences. So like it's become so mainstream. I think that those ideas are still relevant. I just think you would maybe even have to present it in a different way because this is almost just like, yeah, we get it, obviously.
Yeah. Like I said, I think you could lean into one way. I think this
movie's really smart for the time it came out.
Yeah, I think it's ripe for a remake, if I'm being honest, too, because you could do the CGI even better, just go full CGI without the puppets and make it look really good. And then if you just lean a little bit more into the meta-ness and kind of get away from kind of the kid's love story, I think like a remake of this would actually be not terrible. So I would check that out.
If you wanted to see a remake or a sequel beyond the remake you just pitched to one of these two movies, which would it be and what would your pitch be?
I think for me, I would probably rather see a pitch to Small Soldiers, honestly, just because like sequel or reboot wise, I don't really see that happening for Cool Running.
What's the story? We need the story. Maybe 2026 Jamaican bobsled swing wins, and they're coached by Doris or something. Like, I don't know.
That would kind of be cool, but I feel like it's not really necessary or something that I even really want to see, if I'm being honest. I think maybe a straight up reboot would be fun, but it's gonna have the same story beats. So for me,
it's one of those things like we probably don't need it because this is a good version.
Yeah, and for me, I pretty much just wanted to look at Small Soldiers from a different angle too. So possibly change up the tonality of it a lot. And I guess it's more of a reboot than a sequel. I'm keeping pretty much all the cast, and I do want to do it in the modern age here. So Kirsten Dunst is back. Gregory Smith, the kid who does nothing, is back. Of course, David Cross is back too. But we're actually Tommy Lee Jones and all the voice actors are like coming to life. Ooh. So basically, there's a big transformation thing. And I was thinking of having just like Rick Moranis or somebody in it, kind of like a throwback to the 80s and 90s, and just have him be like this weird scientist who kind of figures it out. Just kind of bring him back into Hollywood as well. But the overall plot would basically just be kind of like a Terminator movie. Like these small soldiers are just taking everybody out. And then obviously Kirsten Dunst and Gregory Smith, they get word that they've come back and they're like, oh, we can probably, help stop these guys. And then they go get David Cross and it's hijinks from there. But I think that'd be fun. A bit of a legacy sequel in a sense, but kind of just upping the action and using a lot of kids. I want it to be made for people who saw this as kids originally in the 90s too. So kind of in that legacy sequel sense, this isn't going.
You got to bring back all the stuff.
Yeah, like this is not a kids movie. It's going for the people who saw this as a kid in the 90s.
Yeah. We're adults now, so time to make it for the
time
adults.
to see some bloody action, maybe.
Not violence, action. Important to remember.
Yeah, same thing.
For me, I think it's also Small Soldiers, and I want to see Gorgonites direct sequel. They're living in the woods. They found their home. They've learned how to procreate, a la Jurassic Park. They figured it out. Life finds a way. Some might even say. And the U.S. military is like, oh shit, they're making chips for us. They're procreating chips. So we want to go in there and get these chips. They burn their hometown down, a la Avatar. They burn down the forest and they're hunting them down. Alan has to come back to kind of find him a new place to live or whatever.
It's getting dark in the sequel.
Hey,
it's kind of like a
like you said,
Apes movie.
Same thing as you. The adults. We've grown up. We're ready for the adult sequel to Small Soldiers. Is yours, by the way, called Big Soldiers?
Big Soldiers. It is called Big Soldiers.
I just wanted to make sure.
I was going for a colon too, so I want to go Small Soldiers 2, Big Soldiers.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Mine is like Small Soldiers in the Woods or something.
It sounds like you're pitching like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes or something with Small Soldiers.
Dawn of the Planet of the Small Soldiers.
That's not bad, actually.
Or Planet of the Gorgonites, maybe.
Oh,
who knows?
Is everybody coming back to that though? Is Kirsten Dunst coming back?
I don't think we see Kirsten Dunst. I hate to see it. I don't think she really. I think I'm gonna be honest. Her and Alan are not meant to be.
Probably not.
They're not long term.
But they got to get reconnected at some point in their life.
True. Maybe that is what this one's all about. I think if anything, she's married. She comes back. She's got a new husband.
Well, that didn't stop her in the past. So.
Yeah, that's true. Which two actors from these films would you want to see swap roles?
Yeah, this was a tough one, I think, too. Oh, I have two answers, actually.
Okay.
So my first one, I'm replacing the main kid in Small Soldiers, Gregory, or whatever his name was. So I think he's okay. But I think this movie would be a lot more interesting, Small Soldiers would, in Cool Runnings, at the pushcart scene, it's Sanka and like all of his boys. I want the one kid who replaced Greg in Small Soldiers to be the kid who's in the front of the pushcart driver. And when they crash, he gets off and he goes, and then he goes, Sanka! Like, that's great acting, I think. So that kid needs
He's got chops.
He does have chops. That was literally in my notes. I think from that one specific scene, I saw that he's got some chops. And yeah, I think putting him in a bigger role would be fun. There's kind of the weird thing of, is he going to do the Jamaican accent? Is he not going to do the Jamaican accent? I'm going to leave that up to him because I think either way, it'd still be fun. Obviously, if he can do a normal American accent, go for it. But probably not. So just keep the Jamaicans in, and you can just like write it in pretty easily. Be like, oh, he moved from Jamaica like 5 years ago.
Father moved here to start a toy store.
It's easy. So I think that'd be fun. And then Greg in that role, I think he'd be okay. Obviously, you just got to kiss some lucky eggs and he would probably have to do the fake Jamaican accent, or it wouldn't make too much sense. I guess not really. There's definitely American.
White boy on the island.
Yeah, there's American. You could just throw in a white boy joke, and that'd be just as good. So I like that swap. My other one, I'll just throw that out there as well. I wanted to replace Tommy Lee Jones in Cool Runnings, basically, because I think he's a little bit kind of just underutilized in Small Soldiers. I mean, it's Tommy freaking Lee Jones, and he's just in kind of this tiny voice actor.
This is perfect. He just got to go to a booth and spit some lines.
I mean, he definitely was happy with it. He probably made a decent amount of money too. But I'm gonna replace him with Raymond J. Barry, who I'm guessing you have no idea who that is. That is Kurt in Cool Runnings. He was John Candy's former coach, who
that guy
just really hates him. So I think Tommy Lee Jones in that role of just like this extreme asshole, and he's more intimidating, I think, than Raymond J. Barry. So I would love to see Tommy Lee Jones. Honestly, this is just like a fan casting of Cool Runnings of how can I make this movie a little better, and I think that would.
You put Tommy Lee Jones, it definitely makes it better.
Oh yeah, put him in like the villain role a little bit. That's gonna be a knockout. And yeah, Raymond J. Barry in Small Soldiers. I mean, he doesn't have to do much. He's got to yell out like military words and sound tough. So I think he did.
He's been born on the 4th of July. He probably played some military.
He's got military experience through film.
My pick is a Tommy Lee Jones, but I'm going full. Let's do it. Let's swap Tommy Lee Jones, John Candy. Let's just go for it. I think Tommy Lee Jones in the Candy role works better. It's not really funny, but I think he can play more of the straight comedy of like, these guys are just kind of like pissing me off. And like that's what's funny about it the whole time. And then, the moments when he shows a little bit of emotion, I feel like make it more special, because like John Candy to a certain extent just feels so lovable already. Like you don't want to hate him. Just whereas like Tommy Lee Jones, I think you could hate him a little bit. You could be like, okay, yeah, this guy cheated. John Candy is the military leader in Small Soldiers. Maybe that doesn't work as well. But again, he's just doing a voice.
Yeah.
So, John Candy can act. And I think it's really just doing like an impression. If you're doing an impression of like a stereotypical military leader, I think John Candy can pull that off just as well.
I think you definitely could. I do like that swap too. It's something I considered. I think Tommy Lee, it would just change the tonality of the movie a little bit. But that's kind of where the character started off anyways. I'm just like, these people are pissing me off. I don't want to be involved. And then he does go towards more of the soft John Candy side. But if it was just a straight, like mean Tommy Lee Jones the entire time, I think that would be a little bit more fun, just because everyone else would be having a lot of fun around him and he'd be like, I hate my life. So, so I think that'd be interesting. I don't hate it.
What's another childhood classic film if we were going to do the movie swap in the future? Is there anything that
this really opened up Pandora's box for me as well, just trying to remember all the movies that I watched consistently. But I did have a few. The big one for me, I don't know why, but this is probably one of the movies that I've seen the most, is Cheaper by the Dozen 2, the sequel. The first one is actually a pretty good family movie, I think. The second one, they just go to a lake house and they basically just beef with Eugene Levy's family, who also has like 10 kids. It's pretty bad, but it's got some okay music. And I don't know. I just watched that movie a lot because it was available to me.
I always like, in my head, I blur together like Cheaper by the Dozen, and then there's like an Eddie Murphy one, and then there's like RV gets thrown in. Like all those movies just like feel the same to me.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen Cheaper by the Dozen 2.
Yeah, probably not. I don't think anybody really did. I think it bombed horrifically. But the first Cheaper by the Dozen, I think, is actually not bad. There's probably a bunch of stuff that doesn't hold up great, like Ashton Kutcher's character and Tom Wellington, whatever his name is, Superman's character. There's probably some bad stuff in there, but I think that actually is that's another movie that does make me cry. I'm not gonna lie. There's some good stuff in that. But Cheaper by the Dozen 2, yeah, just bad sequel and definitely no emotional moments. It's going for a straight up family comedy. Some other random ones I'll go through here quick too. Some other sports one, The Rookie, which I've talked about before in our baseball draft. I love that movie. Everyone's Hero, which also came up in the baseball draft.
And I haven't seen it.
No one's seen that. Christopher Reeves directed, so shout out there. Also good voice cast. And then I've talked about The Parent Trap before, obviously on the podcast too. Great family flick. And then
The original or the reboot?
The reboot. Yeah, the Dennis Quaid reboot with Lindsay Lohan. Just really good. I don't know if I've ever seen the original, actually. It's probably better. But Lindsay Lohan as a twin, I think, is done pretty much perfectly. So I love that movie. And then lastly, Lion King 1.5. That was another one I've probably seen about as many times as Cool Runnings. I think those three were all on the line in the movie block. Cheaper by a Dozen 2, Cool Runnings, and Lion King 1.5. those three would probably just kind of solidify my childhood. So shout out to those. But yeah, there's probably, and like I said, I mean, there's more coming up even as we're talking about it here. So I think there's a lot of stuff lost in the memory, but I think those two would be fun ones to do on another pod similar to this.
Here's a couple I wrote down. Anything Wallace and Gromit, but particularly the
Nice.
Curse of the Were Rabbit.
That's
I feel
actually
like
a really good movie.
there was I mean, Oscar nominated film.
Yeah.
For I don't know what it is. Just like Wallace and Gromit was one that kind of would pop up for me. This is a little bit of an older one, Big Fat Liar, or like a little bit older than each one. I'm sure you've seen that, but Frankie Muniz, Amanda Bynes, and Paul Giamatti. I love that. That's like so rewatchable. I think we'll definitely do it on the podcast. Maybe just as a regular episode sometime.
That'd be a good one.
The animated film Robots. Did you ever watch that one, Cody?
Yeah.
That one's completely forgotten, I think, to time. But there was like a Robots video game that I would play sometimes. And then the last one, The Little Vampire. Are you familiar with The Little Vampire?
I think it's the first one
It's about a little redheaded vampire kid. Well, there's like a real vampire, and then there's a little kid who wants to become a vampire. It's another Disney movie that they would play. Definitely a classic. That might be the pick for the swap next.
Yeah, I like that. Little ginger vampire. Shout out to him. He's probably going through some hard times. So that'd be a fun episode.
2000s, very young, The Little Vampire. Let's move on to the 3-movie mini draft.
Well, it is draft day.
This week we're doing movies that are rated G, which it's funny because neither of the movies, Cool Runnings or Small Soldiers, is rated G. They're both PG.
Yeah.
But as this is a childhood movie swap episode, we wanted to draft movies appropriate for all audiences.
True.
All ages. So I think you picked first last week, so I get first pick.
Did I?
Well, I'm going to go for an all-time classic in my heart. And I know it's not a movie you're going to take, so maybe it's a bad number one overall pick, but it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Planet of the Apes, the original, 1960.
That's rated G?
Rated G. That's the beauty of the 60s, where like, if it wasn't a terrible movie and rated R, it was probably rated G.
Which is, I don't know if that's a good thing or
maybe
bad
cheating
thing.
the system a little bit here.
Yeah.
Charlton Heston.
That was not on my radar. I do like that movie. I probably wouldn't have picked it regardless if it was on my radar. But very good twist.
Gotta respect it.
Good Charlton Heston, yeah. I do respect it. Interesting first pick though. For myself, I definitely know what I'm gonna pick, and I'm not too worried about you stealing a couple of these. So first off, I'm just gonna go with the classic and go with Lion King. I mean, for me, this is probably the best animated movie of all time, in my opinion. Or it's got to be, or at least kind of Disney animation, that style, just like kids animation. I mean, the soundtrack's ridiculous, just a classic story. Voice acting is amazing. Shout out James Earl Jones. And yeah, like I said, the music is just unbelievable, and I think it's a crazy rewatchable movie. And like I said, probably just one of the best animated movies of all time. So I am definitely probably going to be sticking along the animation train here a little bit, but I think The Lion King is an easy first pick for me.
Yeah. I mean, Lion King's a classic. I'll follow you up with a little bit of an animation, and I'm going to go for Beauty and the Beast. Wow. Just a musical work of art. And of course, I don't know. I think of the 90s, like princess Disney movies, probably my favorite. I'm not big like Little Mermaid, and especially if you get older, like Cinderella, that stuff doesn't really appeal to me. I think Beauty and the Beast is the more interesting story.
I agree. I think out of the Disney princess movies, it's probably the best. Should have Cogsworth and Lumiere.
Oh yeah,
that definitely was not. And Chip, yeah, that was not on my radar either. But I do like that movie. Best Picture nomination, I believe. So shout out. My second pick, I'm gonna go. It's tough. I think I'm just gonna go Wall-E.
Ooh.
Pixar wise, I think it's up there with my favorites. Obviously, there's a lot of really, really good Pixar movies, but just it's a different kind of Pixar movie. I think, in obviously like its tonality, it's really touching on an important subject. I think, going about it in a different way, and the fact that like the first half hour there's like no dialogue, but you connect so much with this robot character throughout that time. I think it's really interesting just how they set up the movie. Obviously, once he goes into space and you get to like the overweight humans and stuff, I think it slows down a little bit. But his like relationship with Eve really does carry the story, and it's just like such a likable character. And I think it's also visually probably one of the most beautiful animated movies. So that's got to make my list here.
Yeah. What Wally is able to accomplish in such a short period of time is truly amazing. Like you said, it being a silent film, essentially. I think it's the only Pixar movie to be like selected for the Criterion Collection. Definitely a great pick there. Probably my favorite. For
Last
me,
pick, right?
last pick here. I could go another animated movie, but I'm going to go another just classic film with a G rating. And that's going to be The Wizard of Oz.
Wow.
One of the greatest musicals of all time. Groundbreaking in the way that it used color and black and white photography, story, incredible costume design. Some problematic things, sure, but a movie that I do really think still holds up today. I saw it in theaters a couple months ago, and it's really incredible.
Yeah.
Judy Garland, good stuff.
I do like the movie a lot. That was hovering right on my third pick, so I might have taken that, honestly. It was in between that and what obviously I'm going to take now, but I love that movie. Like you said, it's just an all-time classic. Shout out to Ruby Red Slippers. Just a lot of fun side characters too. There's a lot of weird stuff in it, but I think historically one of the better made movies of all time. The Wizard of Oz was probably not going to be my pick here. Probably my first honorable mention. I mean, I gotta go Ratatouille. I mean, how could it not? We'll talk about this movie a bunch more, but Patton Oswalt, perfect casting, I think, as Remy. It's just a really, really unexpectedly great family movie. I feel like I don't know, when I went into watching it the first time, it's like, oh, it's about a rat who cooks. Like, that's pretty dumb. But the characters,
agreed.
You really relate to them, and you really do get invested with just this rat's family dynamic. And then it's kind of just a classic story too, of a character leaving their home because they think they can do better. And then they go off and achieve their dreams, but their family doesn't understand because it's just an entirely, completely kind of source of life. It's a really deep story just about a rat cooking, and he's a hell of a chef. And all the human characters are a lot of fun too. Obviously, you have Linguini, who is kind of the other main character, but the villains of Chef Skinner, who's a real dick, and I just like how they can cross that too. Rats and humans are pretty much connecting and have rivalries.
Yeah.
Which I think is really fun. But yeah, just I think the surprise factor and just the overall writing of this movie is really, really good.
Yeah, definitely.
Shout out
Ratatouille.
Episode.
Toy Story was either Toy Story 1 or 2 would be the next thing that I would probably pick. Yeah. And then also 2001: A Space Odyssey, another underrated G-rated film.
Oh, I didn't know it was rated. That's a dark G movie.
Yeah, I was gonna go for it for 3, but it felt against the spirit of what we were doing.
Shout out Hal. Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know that one. But yeah, literally the next time on my list were The Wizard of Oz and then Toy Story 2. I think Toy Story 2 is my favorite Toy Story movie, weirdly enough. So I like that one a lot.
Last category here, weekly watches.
Karen, honey, what do you watch?
Beyond the stuff we watched this weekend,
Yeah.
Kody. Anything you've been into recently?
I've been to a little bit of stuff. So, I mean,
it's been a while since we recorded.
It has. And I really haven't been to too much, to be honest. But I did watch the 2 newly original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ones, the Michael Bay produced ones. Yeah.
Fox.
And I'd never seen them. So it was an interesting experience. Pretty much they're both just garbage, I would say.
I hate them.
The first one is very bad.
Travesty.
I don't know why Megan Fox is April O'Neil, so
it's not a great pick.
It's pretty bad casting.
It's a Michael Bay pick. I mean.
Yeah, and then the Turtles, I think the look is maybe overhated, but it's obviously not good.
I'd agree with that.
But just their character development, I really hate. Michelangelo is just the most annoying, horny turtle I've ever seen in my life. Leonardo's not even there. I can't tell you one thing he does in any of these movies. And then Raphael's just this tank who just hates everybody. And Donatello's just a nerd. So
I mean, yeah, it's the things those are the archetypes of the Turtles, obviously, but they focus on the one thing and they don't expand it beyond anything else, which I think in other iterations they do a much better job.
Yeah, they literally don't do anything. That's just who they are. So.
Yeah, they're one note.
Pretty bad. Also, this CGI Splinter is actually pretty bad, I think. And too much product placement, just too much a Transformers movie, I think. So, yeah. Oh, and also William Fichtner in the first one. Just the reshoots and the recast of him as Splinter, I think is really funny in hindsight. So shout out to him.
Well, and the worst part is that this is a Michael Bay movie, but it's not even directed by Michael Bay, so you don't even get the actual quality. At least we can make jokes about Michael Bay all we want. The man knows how to make a movie, right? He's a talented technical filmmaker, and this lacks that part of it.
I guess, but the first one's bad. The second one,
slightly better.
Yeah, it's definitely better, but I still don't like it at all.
At least more faithful to what Ninja
Yeah,
Turtles
it is definitely a lot more faithful. I think the thing that I really hate about it is Stephen Amell as Casey Jones. I think it's just
Scab himself.
god awful. And yeah, personally, I don't really like him either. But just leaving that aside, I think he's just really, really bad in this movie. So tough look there. Past that, the only other thing really I have been into a little bit, I started watching Andor, which is obviously the Star Wars Rogue One spin-off of Cassian Andor. It's like a 12 episode, just one mini series, I believe. I think they're doing another season of it though, so that's cool.
Yeah, 2 seasons.
Okay.
Strike, it's gonna be a while, but
Yeah, probably. But I watched like the first 5 episodes. It's only like a half-hour variation, so I kind of just went through a bunch of them to get all the setup. It's not bad so far. It's kind of slow for half-hour episodes. I feel like you could have probably just contained 2 episodes at a time and probably like slash 10 minutes for both. So it's really not too long, and just have like 6 or 7 episodes for the entire season. Basically, I mean everything that I've seen is mostly just set up of where did this guy come from? How did he get kind of connected to the rebellion in a sense? And then the next thing that they're going on is like this big rebellious mission, which is kind of like a suicide run in a sense. So I think the action will definitely pick up. Just kind of the world building of some of the Empire characters too has been pretty good. So I'm excited to see where that goes. But I've heard good things. So I think as the series goes along here, I'll probably get deeper and deeper into it. But I'm excited. I think it's a good setup. Kind of just a little bit long to get where I'm at, to be honest.
as a Star Wars fan, I need to do my due diligence and get back on and give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, I've been behind on. I still haven't finished Mandalorian season 3, so I've been pretty far behind on my. And I mean, Disney Plus wise, there's like a new MCU project every week that I have to keep up with. So it's hard to keep track of all that. But
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even. I think we've talked about. I'm not going to do the Secret Invasion thing. It's not going to happen.
no, and like I said in our last episode, I wouldn't recommend anybody to watch that. Maybe watch the pilot and then literally just don't watch anything after that because there's an important. Well, I mean, I guess I don't know. There's a lot of important deaths, I guess, but not really. Everybody just dies. But yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't recommend that. But Andor, not bad so far. I have a plan.
I'll rip through a couple things that I've watched since our last recording. Cape Fear is an interesting one. That's a Martin Scorsese 90s movie with Robert De Niro basically playing like maybe his most insane character ever, which is kind of crazy. He plays a character named Max Cady, who's basically like a serial rapist and murderer. He's got some crazy tattoos, and he's just terrorizing Nick Nolte's family. Because Nick Nolte plays this lawyer that didn't help him get out of jail like 10 years ago. Now that he's finally out on parole, he's going to come and mess with Nick Nolte's family.
That sounds pretty good.
It's probably like Scorsese's most commercial like movie, like purely just like a 90s like genre movie. But it was interesting. It still had a little bit of the Scorsese-isms and a really strong performance from De Niro in an absolutely vile
Nice.
role.
I might check it out. That premise.
I know Cape Fear, a lot of people were comparing Creed 3 and the kind of that like, old friend from prison shows up and is kind of fucking with you a little bit. Similar things.
Jonathan Major's character.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's a similar idea. On top of that, I saw the new Mission Impossible movie, which I really thought was not great.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some good action scenes in it, but they said, we're going to do the stunts and then we're going to figure out the script around it. And you can definitely tell that they did that. The villain of this movie is artificial intelligence. And like the ideas they play with that are actually pretty interesting, especially in the context of like strikes and the way actors are approaching artificial intelligence, in their work.
Yeah.
It's cool to see that play out in a movie in this way, especially in 2023. Sure, we've seen it in Terminator and countless 90s and 2000s films. But now, as we understand what AI will be, seeing that approach to it was pretty cool. But the human characters, the human villains, Plump, Minty, and the other ones just didn't have a lot to do because AI is the real thing.
Yeah, I like Palm too. That sucks that she kind of got.
She like doesn't get to speak until the last like 20 minutes, which I really hate.
Yeah.
I saw people praising her performance, but it's like she doesn't even get, she does some action stuff. She gets to fight.
Yeah.
But come on, give her some dialogue.
That is disappointing.
Come on, McCory. I also watched the original Wicker Man, which is just like an absolutely sick old horror movie. If you like Midsommar, you definitely like this. It's like a musical version of Midsommar. I also saw Talk to Me, which is a new horror movie. definitely go check that out if you like new horror.
Yeah.
Also written and directed by some guys that got their start making like YouTube shorts and YouTube like short films.
Nice.
So it's cool to see people make that jump into real movies.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that.
I told you about personally in our conversations about seeing the Black Dahlia and 30 Days a Night, two Josh Hartnett movies. I guess post Oppenheimer, I was really feeling the Hartnett hive.
Yeah.
Black Dahlia, terrible film. Aaron Eckhart, fuck you, you're terrible. And 30 Days a Night, it's an interesting concept with maybe not the most successful execution.
There needs to be like a Black Dahlia video essay created by you, because
where I just explain what happens for 20 minutes.
That could be an episode down the line too. It's crazy.
The Black Dahlia breakdown. Yeah, Brian De Palma, shout out. That's really all I've got though. So thank you guys for listening to this childhood movie swap. Kody, it's great to do an episode in person again.
Yeah, love the in-person episodes. Yeah, hopefully it's a little bit less time in between in-person episodes, because I do like these a lot more. Obviously, I think it's a lot easier, but KHAP's here to stay, and I think we'll get a couple more here a lot quicker than the gap we had before. So always a good time.
And look forward to our next episode where we journey through the streets of New York to discuss movies.
True. Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah, it's definitely stay tuned and stay KHAP.
Peace.
What you've just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.